Alright guys, such comic again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. New update on Rostermania this evening. The Miami guys implying that there's some serious things going down right now with that team. Are they just baiting or are there serious implications at play? Because we're pretty sure now the Los Angeles Thieves are going to be blowing their team apart. Latest updates though suggest the team actually wanted to stick the core 4 players, but the management and the decision makers at the very top end of that team decided change is necessary in a similar way maybe to what Hex did when the OpTic team wanted to stay together not that long ago, and then they dropped Skies for Mercules. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Just to quickly get into that again, there was lots of reaction from Dashy finally turning the stream on, getting back from Saudi Arabia, talking about what a roller coaster the last couple of months have been, going from having a terrible team for a part of the season, bringing in Skies and showing some degree of promise, and then of course making the big blockbuster change. And that's what's worthy of discussion when we get to this Thieves conversation in a second, because we know that there's always this debate between what the players want and what the team owners slash coaches may potentially want. Often you should listen to the players, because if a player is telling you one thing, okay, we want this guy dropped or we don't want to drop this guy, then if you do that, sometimes it can affect the feeling of that player, the culture and the chemistry of the team. It's why for many years there's not really been, a coach, a general manager wasn't really a thing. The players would just choose what they wanted to do. But do the players always make the best decisions? As we know, no. And if you let the players choose their teammate, often they can go astray based on, they might not look at all the factors, they might see who their friendships with and all these other things. And understandably, there were times this year for OpTic where they didn't want to make a move, because as we know, they made so many moves. Pred was there, then he was gone, Huke was in, Huke was out again, Pred was back in, then he was gone, then Kenny was gone, and Skies was in, and Huke was back in, and it was an absolute mess. And Shotzzy was deciding, okay, you know what guys, let's just not make a change. Skies, we're getting a bit better with him, maybe we're showing a bit more promise, maybe we can do something here. And Shotzzy didn't want to make a change. He literally said that back at Major 3 he was hate watching Mercules so that they wouldn't have to make a change. Shotzzy didn't want to make a move. And Hector and Methods and others were like, look, this Mercules kid is the truth. We need to have a conversation here. That's what they did. And the rest is history. But if it was up to the players, it wouldn't have happened. And it was the same story going into this season, when Hex said that he wanted, okay, he didn't say this, but it was said by Hitch, and Hex hasn't exactly denied it, and the clip went out there publicly, that after last year's World Championship, he was pretty keen to consider getting Scrap and HyDra when they were available. And in hindsight, should they have done it? I mean, probably the answer is yes. The team didn't work out with Pred and Kenny. They went through an absolute mess of a season. And yeah, Mercules just happened to come along and look like an industry plant the way that the season concluded. But given the information they had at the time, in hindsight, you might have said that what the ownership in that case wanted to do was the correct call. Now, in this Thieves circumstance, it is a little bit different. We'll get into why that is here in a second and whether there are similar parallels to draw. But the point is that the players don't necessarily always know best. Now, Dashy was saying next year, you know what, if we're going to win champs in the World Cup again, I'll go 0-36, I'll go 0-54, I don't care, like, I'll take a loss streak if we're going to triumph at the big tournaments of the year. Of course, as a player, you're going to take that trade, but Kama says, damn, don't go 0-36, lads, or we might not even make it to the World Championship. We've got the Breaking Point Awards coming up it's one Sunday time on the 10th of August. We're going to have a live show doing all the awards on the 2025 season. I know lots of you guys have voted in the awards already. We just had a quick rundown of last year's awards. Last year there was a pretty controversial one, of course, that went to Skies for the Clutch Player of the Year. Dashy was not so happy about that. And yeah, we've talked about Mercules, we've talked about Shotzzy, and we are going to continue to do so, I am sure. Just quickly on the OpTic side, the process is coming out. I think it's on the 14th of August. Maybe they're doing it on OpTic Day to drop the process, and then we'll see what happens from there. But yeah, JP says he's done his interview about what has been, I'm sure, a rather remarkable season from his perspective. Now, a couple of bits of drama to get into. Neptune was on stream and he had a few interesting words to say. He was actually discussing the all-star team here and basically was surprised that he wasn't on it. He pretty much said, well, I know who the real ones are, that effectively implying that he feels like he should have been voted for and wasn't, because he mentions at least one specific player who they tended to always beat during the regular season, and he feels like was pretty unfair that he wasn't included. Maybe he's talking about JoeDeceives, maybe he's talking about, I don't know, Rancor from Heretics, whatever you want to say. A couple of guys made it that Neptune thinks maybe shouldn't have done. Do you guys think in hindsight these were the correct placings on the all-star teams? So it was Scrap, Cell, HyDra and Simp. That was the first all-star team, and they were weighted. I mean, Scrap was voted number 1 by everyone as an AR. HyDra was near enough voted number 1 by the the talented media actually had Simp at number 1, but it was pretty close really between the pair of those guys. And then it was the second all-star team, which is the slightly more controversial one. Neptune was actually voted 6th here, behind Envoy, behind aBeZy, and also behind JoeDeceives. So the second all-star team was Rencor, JoeDeceives, Drazah, and aBeZy. Should Neptune have been on there ahead of either Joe or aBeZy? You know, I think you could definitely make the argument, right? No doubt about that. But yeah, you can look at it a couple of different ways. That's just what it looked like at the end of the season. Whether that's fair or not is a question. But of course, these were decided before Champs and the World Cup, where things took a little bit of a nosedive for some of the big favourites for the season. Now, let's talk about Heretics, because Super drops a tweet. Now, look, is he, like, we get this, right? We get the Rostermania engagement baiting. I get it. It is what it is. But Super does tweet it out. He tweets out the mind-blown emoji. And then we get Jose Real, who says just shortly afterwards, and here we go. So does this imply something's going on with the Heretics? We know that Metals and Real are both free agents. Now, Real still has the Heretics little tag thing here, but he said a couple of days ago, unrestricted free agent for the season. That's not the case for Rencor, definitely they're not going to allow him to go. But I don't know, is he talking about the T? Like, so, look, changes are happening here. Is it involving the other guys on the Heretics is a very good question. But when you've got Super kind of tweeting out, well, here we go, and then Real has said literally the same thing, then it implies that something's happening. Whether that's with Heretics, look, at the end of the day, when you've got a couple of guys on your team who are now free agents, something probably is going to give. And we know that Rencor, frankly, should be a real top target for some of these teams. And to be honest, if a team wants a great search and destroy roster, then Super's a guy to look at as well, and his English is pretty solid at that. So, I don't know, maybe in hindsight, this was Heretics' year to try and win with the team they had, because it is very plausible that somebody gets poached. Of course, they would love to probably keep a lot of this roster together, but I don't know if that's going to be so easy to make happen given so many other big names that are out there on the market right now. And that's when we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Thieves. So there was a report that came out a couple of days ago to say that Thieves are not making changes, and the reason Ghost of Hope says why he said that is because at the time that was his understanding of what the players wanted. The players pretty keen to say, you know what, we gave it a good go. We won a couple of events. This team is capable of more than we showed at the end of the season. Let's run it back. We had a good dynamic. And they may be onto something by saying those things, but that's not necessarily what's actually going to be happening. We did throw this comparison out there looking at Abuzah versus Ghosty. Of course, like, KD does not sell the entire picture of these two players. Is Abuzah for Ghosty an upgrade? In my opinion, no. Like, just looking at the full package, I can see, you know, pros to Abuzah over Ghosty, but I can certainly see pros to Ghosty over Abuzah as well. And when you've got a team that has been there and it has done it, then it makes you wonder, you know, would you blow that up unless there was a real option out there that would definitely improve your team? And maybe there is, and we'll get into who that could be here in a second. But earlier today, you know, we were talking about Ghosty and the friction that he had with OpTic back in the day and whether there was a similar thing here. Like, the players might have been down to continue, maybe the coaching staff were not, and that was the rumor that came out today. So, you know, Ghost of Hope was talking about it, dropping down. It was on a 2+1 to do a lateral or downgrade move when your two superstars could walk as free agents after the season is crazy to me. It's short-sightedness, because it's also worth considering if you're Thieves, Scrap and HyDra, you've really got to have a good season upcoming, because if you don't, they're just going to walk out the door and not re-sign a new deal. We know that if we look at Ghosty's numbers, his LAN numbers are not as good as they were online, and, you know, his grand finals performances until, you know, he finally got over the line this time haven't especially been great. But, you know, there was talk about Cellium, right? And for very good reason. Cellium's available. He's seemingly a total free agent. Now, I know that some people have said, I think Cellium's ex-girlfriend is now dating HyDra. So, you know, is that an issue? I don't know. It depends on the individuals, I suppose, but I know that it's been something that people have talked about as to being a potential hurdle. At the end of the day, if you're going to try and form a God squad, it's got to be something that's worth consideration, because where would Cellium go that's going to be better than that if it was a possibility? But this is what Ghost of Hope said. It was management, as far as I'm aware. Heard players wanted to stick, hence my original report. So very interesting if this is true, and Ronnie kind of said a similar thing in the article, that this definitely did come, at least in part, from the top. And what management, like whose management, right? Is this an A-shot? Doubtful. Is that the coaches? Is that other individuals in play? Good question, right? But it's definitely interesting what we discussed a few minutes ago with the OpTic staff and the fact that Hex wanted to step in and the players didn't necessarily want to make a move happen. It seems that they have decided, you know what, keeping Ghosty is not in our best interest and we want to do something else. I know there's many people out there who will say, look, Envoy should go, they should get rid of him, like he's the man costing the team, whatever you want to say. I don't really believe that to be true. I honestly think that that quartet was incredibly strong and played their roles in many respects perfectly this season, but it must be stated that at the end of the year, whether that team just got complacent, whether issues in practice started to emerge, whether the egos got the better of the team, and where that came from, because when that team Thieves this year was playing at their best, they were almost impossible to upgrade from. Like, everyone was filling the roles so perfectly that, you know, I didn't expect them to make a change in the off-season, but back-to-back top 8s makes anything possible. And if I'm the, you know, the coaching staff, the management over there, I'm trying to pinpoint, okay, the issues that arose at the end of the season were much more mental than they were actually skill-based, I would say. Now, not necessarily mental in the game, but also lead up to the World Championship and also the World Cup as well. OpTic were dialed in, right? They had everything locked down inside and outside of the game. Clearly, Thieves did not. And where did that come from, right? What were the issues in practice? Scrap said that his practice was not good with the team going into the World Championship, and we know where that's going to get you. So that's the diagnosis, really. It's not like Ghosty didn't do a phenomenal job for the team, but if the management believes that Ghosty was a root cause of why they had the poor performance at the end of the year from like a mentality perspective, then I can understand consideration for it. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. These, just out of interest, were Envoy's cards as well. 84 on LAN, 85 overall. Again, we saw the same thing with Ghosty's cards. Envoy was purple in objective work for SMGs this season. Best SMG objective work technically in the league. Ghosty was the same for the ARs. If we look at Ghosty's numbers, purple in those categories as well. So that should be no surprise. These guys played with Scrap and HyDra and they did their roles in the way that they were meant to do them. But the team may have other ideas going into the end of the season. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing to close out with. Sib was on Attach's stream. They were talking about a few things. And, you know, we know that Sib's a bit of a controversial character in the scene, but he was actually giving a lot of gas to Shotzzy, saying, you know, this guy's clear superstar, watches VOD every day, every night. And he also was commenting in reply to this one, right? So we came up with the Huke cards and, well, all of the cards. And look, was Huke better than a 78 this season? Absolutely. In terms of impact for the team, he was in the 90s for sure. But the cards are based on the stats of the season, and for whatever reason, his KD was fine and solid, but his kills per 10, his damage per 10, his objective work, especially in control, was just not very high. And as a result, his numbers in control were not good, and his search and destroy numbers were okay, but nothing special. His hardpoint was very good, and that puts him about a 78. So, you know, people obviously were talking about this, like, the Lion Man cards are there for entertainment and talking points at the end of the day. They're not meant to be accurate representations of how impactful a player actually was over the course of a season, but I thought it was interesting to look at regardless, because Sid was then in the reply saying, delete this, fake news, Kyler is at least a 90 throughout the year. He's a back-to-back champion. No back-to-back champion is a 77 overall. And look, I don't disagree, but you know, the cards are based on the numbers at the end of the day. It is what it is. Intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
How's your relationship with Shotzzy? I'm golden. Should have been in one of the All-Star teams. Still don't get it. That's what I'm saying. Like, bruh, I honestly don't care about the propaganda shit. Cause that's all I needed to see to know that these motherfuckers are not on my side, like, and nor do I give a fuck. I'm not gonna put any, you know, I'm not gonna say any names, but bro, the one or two of the motherfuckers that were on the All-Star shit, pretty sure we lost to one of those teams only one time this whole year. The only time we lost to them was a random online match. Every single LAN I played for them, I played a couple of those teams to get into finals and beat them every single time badly. And still, those motherfuckers literally, their name was put over mine. So like, to be honest, like, really, in my honest opinion, I don't even give a fuck about that shit. Like, that's all I needed to see. Like, okay, like, that shit literally holds 0 weight, in my opinion. 0 weight. Like, I don't care. Nor should anyone else care. People only care about whose hype is around, whose name, etc. Like, no one cares genuinely about, like, the matchups or who's actually, like, raw at COD. Because to me, like, if I made my own list, motherfuckers would be fucking hating on my shit.